History is often forged in the crucible of chaos. At the turn of the 14th century, Anatolia was a patchwork of rival states. The once mighty Byzantine Empire was a shadow of its former self, its power crumbling. The Seljuk Sultanate of Rum had been shattered by the relentless Mongol invasions. Into this power vacuum stepped small, ambitious Turkoman principalities known as beyliks. They were led by warrior chieftains, men of action and vision. Among these was a small tribe, the Kayi, led by a man named Ertugrul. His son Osman would give his name to an empire that would change the world. Osman Ghazi was more than just a tribal leader. He was a frontier warrior, a Ghazi, fighting for faith and fortune on the edge of the Byzantine world. These Ghazis were a potent force, a brotherhood of fighters drawn to the promise of glory and spoils. The story goes that Osman, while staying in the home of a holy man, had a powerful dream. In this vision, a moon rose from the chest of the holy man. Then, a magnificent tree sprouted from his navel. Its branches grew and grew, stretching across the continents, its shadow blanketing the entire world. Great rivers flowed from its roots. When Osman recounted this dream, the holy man interpreted it as a divine prophecy. It was a sign that God had granted Osman and his descendants a vast and enduring empire. This was the founding myth, the divine mandate that would fuel his ambition and that of his successors. It gave his warriors a higher purpose. Osman's dream was the seed from which the mighty Ottoman Empire would grow, its roots embedded deep in the Anatolian soil where it all began. Osman's strategy was simple, yet devastatingly effective. He focused his attacks on the Byzantine frontier. He did not challenge the more powerful Turkoman beyliks. Instead, he looked west, toward weakened Christian territories. These were soft targets. Byzantine forts were isolated. Their garrisons were underpaid and demoralized. Osman's Ghazi warriors were agile and struck quickly. They would raid villages. They would disrupt supply lines. They would lay siege to small fortresses. It became a war of attrition, a slow strangulation of Byzantine authority in Bithynia, northwestern Anatolia. Not grand-pitched battles yet. A pivotal moment came in 1302. A Byzantine force was sent from Constantinople to relieve besieged Nicomedia. Osman, with approximately 5,000 light cavalry, moved to confront them. At Baphius he avoided a head-on clash. He used his horsemen's mobility, launching a ferocious charge. The professional but startled Byzantines were overwhelmed. They broke and fled. It was a huge victory, the first Ottoman defeat of a formal Byzantine imperial army, announcing Osman as a serious regional power. Baphius was a game-changer. It acted as a magnet, drawing more warriors. They flocked to the winning side. His fame spread fast. Yenisehir was taken, becoming his first real capital. The ultimate prize, Bursa, was now in his sights. The siege of Bursa dragged on. A long, grinding blockade lasted for years, possibly from 1317. Lacking heavy siege engines, the Ottomans built forts around the city. Osman laid the foundation, but it was his son, Orhan, who began to build the state. Ascending to the leadership in 1326, Orhan immediately made the newly captured city of Bursa his capital. This was a profoundly symbolic move. It signaled a shift from a nomadic raider band to a sedentary power with a fixed administrative center. Bursa was a major commercial hub. Bursa was a cultural hub. Under Orhan, it was transformed into a showcase of Ottoman power. He established the first Ottoman mints, striking silver coins in his own name. This was a crucial declaration of sovereignty. It told the world the Ottomans were no longer just a beylik but an independent dynasty. Orhan was not just a conqueror, he was a statesman. He understood an empire could not be held by the sword alone. It needed institutions. He began to create the framework of government, drawing on Seljuk administrative practices. He also drew on Byzantine administrative practices. He established the office of the Grand Vizier to run daily affairs. He also began formal army organization. He created a standing army of paid infantry, the Yayas. He created cavalry units, the Muselims. This reduced reliance on volunteer Ghazi fighters. It created a more professional, disciplined military force. Under Orhan, conquests continued at a blistering pace. He captured the remaining major Byzantine cities in Anatolia. Nicaea fell in 1331, Nicomedia fell in 1337. These were more than military wins, blows to Byzantine identity. Orhan proved a master of diplomacy and opportunism. He knew the weakened Byzantine Empire was still a key player. He exploited its internal divisions brilliantly. In the 1330s and 1340s, Ottoman warriors served as mercenaries for rival Byzantine factions. They crossed the Hellespont repeatedly. They became familiar with the European landscape and its political rivalries. The fateful moment came in 1354. A powerful earthquake struck the Gallipoli Peninsula, a strategically vital piece of land on the European side of the Hellespont. The walls crumbled. Orhan's son, Suleiman Pasha, stationed nearby, saw this not as a natural disaster, but as a sign from God. He immediately led his troops across the strait and occupied the ruined, undefended fortress.
When the Byzantines demanded he withdraw, he coolly replied he had not taken the fortress by force, but had accepted it as a gift from God.
The capture of Gallipoli was a strategic masterstroke, a permanent bridgehead into Europe. From this secure base, the Ottomans could move troops and supplies from Anatolia into the Balkans at will. They had a permanent, secure foothold on the continent. The balance of power had shifted irrevocably. From Gallipoli, the Ottoman expansion into the Balkans, known as Rumelia, began in earnest. The conquest of the Balkans had begun. When Orhan died in 1362, his son Murad I inherited a state straddling two continents. Murad was formidable, a devout Muslim and a relentless military commander. He immediately capitalized on the European foothold. He aimed to conquer the entire Balkan peninsula. In 1362 he captured Adrianople, a strategic crossroads in Thrace. He moved the capital from Bursa to Adrianople, renaming it Edirne. It isolated Constantinople, surrounding the Byzantine capital. Constantinople was now effectively an island. Murad bypassed Constantinople and targeted weaker states. Murad created the Janissaries, elite infantry loyal only to the Sultan, formed through the Devsirme levy of Christian boys. These boys were converted to Islam, educated and rigorously trained. From Edirne with the Janissaries, Murad launched a systematic conquest. He pushed north and west, defeating Bulgarian princes, defeating Serbian princes. He defeated Bulgarian princes and Serbian princes. In 1371 at Maritsa, Lala Sahin Pasha annihilated a larger Balkan army. The victory devastated the Balkan powers. It shattered the Serbian Empire. It opened Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Serbia to Ottoman domination. Many Balkan rulers became Ottoman vassals. They had to pay tribute and provide troops. The Ottoman tide now seemed utterly unstoppable. By 1389, the Serbian prince Lazar had had enough of Ottoman domination. So he assembled a grand coalition of Balkan forces to confront Murad I and drive the Ottomans out of Europe for good. Murad marched his own formidable army to meet them. The two forces converged on a plain in modern-day Kosovo, known as the Field of Blackbirds. The battle, fought on June 15, 1389, was one of the most epic and brutal confrontations of the 14th century. The fighting was ferocious from the start, with both sides suffering immense casualties. The Serbian knights initially managed to push back the Ottoman left wing, but the discipline and firepower of the Ottoman center, anchored by the Janissaries, held firm. The tide of the battle ebbed and flowed, a bloody stalemate under the summer sun. According to legend, a Serbian knight named Milos Obilic pretended to be a deserter. He gained access to the Sultan's tent, knelt, and fatally stabbed the Sultan. At almost the same time, Murad's son Bayezid launched a devastating counterattack that shattered the Balkan lines. The Christian army collapsed and was routed. Sultan Murad lay dead on the field. Prince Lazar lay dead as well. The battle was technically a draw, but strategically a crushing disaster for the Serbs. Sultan Bayezid I inherited the throne on the bloody field of Kosovo in 1389. He moved with a speed and ferocity that earned him the nickname Yildirim, the Thunderbolt. He was a man of immense energy and ambition, determined to consolidate and expand his father's conquests. Bayezid did not rest. He immediately swept through the Balkans, securing the submission of Bulgaria and pushing the frontier to the Danube River. He pushed the Ottoman frontier to the Danube River. Then he turned his attention back to Anatolia. The Turkoman beyliks, once equals, were now rivals to his absolute power. Between 1390 and 1397, he annexed one beylik after another. He used force, diplomacy, and intimidation. He built a centralized, unitary empire and tolerated no rivals, Muslim or Christian. By the end of the decade, he had brought almost all of Anatolia under his direct control. His empire stretched from the Danube to the Euphrates. His expansion provoked Western Europe. Pope Boniface IX called for a new crusade. Sigismund of Hungary answered and assembled a vast crusader army, knights from France, Germany, England, and across Christendom. They were confident, even arrogant, trusting their heavy cavalry. In 1396, they marched down the Danube and besieged Nicopolis. Bayezid was besieging Constantinople but raced north to meet them. French knights ignored plan and launched a reckless charge. They broke the Ottoman front line but were exhausted before the center. There they met the disciplined Janissaries and were enveloped by Bayezid's cavalry. The Crusader army was annihilated, thousands were killed, thousands more taken captive. Bayezid's prestige peaked. It seemed no power could stop the thunderbolt. His prestige was at its absolute peak. He had Constantinople under a tight blockade. It seemed only a matter of time before the city fell. But a new storm gathered in the east. Another conqueror, Timur, was carving out his own empire from the steppes of Central Asia. Timur, known as Tamerlane, was a military genius of unparalleled ruthlessness. Bayezid's expansion into eastern Anatolia brought him into direct conflict with Timur. Dispossessed Turkoman princes defeated by Bayezid fled to Timur and begged him to intervene. An escalating exchange of insulting letters made war inevitable. Bayezid fatally underestimated his opponent. In the summer of 1400-1402, the two titans met on the plains of Ankara. Bayezid had a massive army, but Timur's was larger, more experienced, and included war elephants brought from India. Timur outmaneuvered Bayezid completely. He diverted a river to cut off the Ottoman army's water supply, forcing them to fight thirsty and exhausted. The Turkoman cavalry from conquered Beyliks defected to Timur's side. The Ottoman army disintegrated. The result was a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Their army was annihilated. Sultan Bayezid I was captured alive and taken to Timur's camp in a cage. He died in captivity a few months later. The empire was shattered, its lands ravaged by Timur's armies. Its leadership was gone. The empire collapsed into civil war. The decade following the disaster is known as the Ottoman Interregnum. Bayezid's sons, Suleiman, Isa, Musa, and Mehmed, fought each other for control. For over 10 years, brother fought brother in a bloody struggle for the throne. The state that Osman, Orhan, and Murad had built seemed to have completely fallen apart. European territories declared their independence. The Anatolian Beyliks were restored by Timur. For over 10 years, brother fought brother. Yet the foundations of the state proved remarkably resilient. The institutions created by Orhan and Murad, Janissary Corps, Devshirme system, centralized bureaucracy, survived the chaos. The machinery of the state, though damaged, continued to function. Out of the chaos, Mehmed I gradually emerged as victor. He was patient, cunning, and ruthless. He defeated his brothers one by one, reuniting Anatolia and the Balkans under his rule. By 1413 he was undisputed sultan, often called a second founder. He avoided grand conquests, focusing on consolidation, healing the civil war's wounds and rebuilding institutions. He restored vassal authority. He was the restorer who pulled the empire back from oblivion. Mehmed I and his successor Murad II spent decades rebuilding Ottoman power. They resubjugated the Balkans and fought off new crusades, most notably at the Battle of Varna in 1444, proving Ottoman military dominance. Their military dominance was reconfirmed. The phoenix rose from Ankara's ashes. The empire emerged stronger and more determined. By the mid-15th century, the empire was restored. Only Bayezid's unfulfilled dream remained: Constantinople. The city stood defiant but isolated. The stage was set for young Mehmed II to seize the prize and end the Roman Empire. From a frontier chieftain to an empire spanning continents, the first chapters of Ottoman history had been written. The centuries-long story was only beginning. The year is 1453, a momentous year, a pivotal year. The ancient city of Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire for over 1,000 years, had fallen. Its mighty walls, once thought to be impenetrable, were breached by the cannons of a young, ambitious sultan. His name was Mehmed II. He was just 21 years old. The fall of this great city sent shockwaves across the known world. It was more than just a military victory. It was the end of an era and the dramatic beginning of a new one. The last vestiges of the Roman Empire were finally extinguished, and from its ashes, a new power was poised to dominate the world stage. Mehmed did not see himself merely as a destroyer. He saw himself as a builder, a unifier. He rode into the conquered city not just as a victor. Mehmed II was far more than a warrior. He was a man of immense intellect and curiosity, a true Renaissance figure, Turkish Arabic, Persian Greek Latin. He studied history, science, poetry with a passion. He invited artists from across Europe, he invited scholars from across Europe, he even brought Gentile Bellini to his court. He wanted to blend the best of Eastern and Western cultures. He saw the magnificent Hagia Sophia, the grandest cathedral in all of Christendom. He ordered it converted into a mosque, a symbol of his faith's triumph. This act set the tone for his reign. He would absorb the legacy of the city he had conquered, making its grandeur his own and transforming it into the glittering capital of his empire. The city was renamed. It became Istanbul, a name that would echo through the centuries. But a capital needs people. Mehmed knew this. He began a massive project to repopulate and rebuild the city. He offered safety, security, and economic opportunity to people from all over his expanding empire. Muslims, Christians, Jews were all invited to settle. He wanted to create a cosmopolitan metropolis. When Selim the Grim died in 1520, his only son, Suleiman, inherited an empire that was larger, wealthier, and more powerful than ever before. Suleiman's reign would mark the absolute peak of Ottoman power and cultural brilliance. In the West, he was known as Suleiman the Magnificent, a testament to the splendor of his court and the might of his armies. In his own lands, he was known as Kanuni, the lawgiver. He was not just a conqueror, he was a master administrator who reformed the empire's legal system, creating a comprehensive code of laws that would last for centuries. Suleiman immediately picked up where his ancestors had left off in Europe. In 1521, he captured the fortress city of Belgrade, which had defied even Mehmed the Conqueror. A few years later, in 1526, he met the Hungarian army at the Battle of Mohacs. The battle was a disaster for the Hungarians. Their king was killed, and their army was annihilated in just a few hours, bringing Suleiman's armies to the very doorstep of the Habsburg domains in Austria. This was the beginning of a great rivalry. The Ottomans under Suleiman and the Habsburgs under Emperor Charles V became the two superpowers of the age, locked in a struggle for control of Europe and the Mediterranean. Suleiman was a brilliant military commander, personally leading his armies on 13 major campaigns. He besieged the great city of Rhodes, finally driving out the Knights of St. John. He expanded his empire's borders deep into North Africa, with his admirals, like the famous Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, dominating the seas and raiding the coasts of Spain and Italy with near impunity. Under Suleiman, Istanbul became the center of the world. Architects like the legendary Mimar Sinan built breathtaking mosques, bridges, and aqueducts that transformed the city's skyline. Poets, painters. For decades, the Ottoman navy had been the terror of the Mediterranean. Under the command of brilliant admirals like Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, Ottoman fleets had raided European coastlines and captured countless ships and controlled the vital sea lanes. They had conquered island after island, pushing back the influence of Venice and Spain. In 1570, the Ottomans launched an invasion of Cyprus, a wealthy and strategic island, a prized possession of the Venetian Republic. This aggressive move was the final straw, spurring the Christian powers to unite against the common threat. Pope Pius V was the driving force behind this new alliance. He worked tirelessly to create a holy league, a combined fleet of ships, Spain, Venice, the Papal States, and other Italian city-states. In 1571, this massive Christian fleet, under the command of Don John of Austria, sailed east to confront the Ottomans. They met the Ottoman fleet in the Gulf of Patras, near a place called Lepanto. What followed was one of the largest and most decisive naval battles in history. The Ottoman fleet was almost completely destroyed. It was a devastating blow to Ottoman naval power and prestige. The news of the victory at Lepanto was celebrated across Europe. It was seen as a divine sign, a turning point in the long struggle against the infidel Turk. For the first time in a century, the Ottomans seemed beatable. While the empire quickly rebuilt its fleet, the Grand Vizier famously said, "In taking Cyprus from you, we have cut off one of your arms. In defeating our fleet, you have only shaved our beard." The psychological impact was immense. The myth of Ottoman invincibility at sea was shattered forever. It showed that a united Christian Europe could, in fact, stand up to and defeat the might of the Sultan. For the first time in a century, the Ottomans seemed beatable. The whole of Europe held its breath as the largest army it had ever seen gathered outside the city's walls. The journey to Vienna was arduous. Ottoman miners dug tunnels to plant explosives under the walls, and their cannons pounded the city's defenses. After weeks of intense fighting, with winter approaching, Suleiman realized a successful assault had become impossible. He called off the siege and began the long march home. The siege was technically a failure, but the campaign showcased Ottoman power. A sultan marching from Istanbul to Vienna terrified Europe's rulers. While the northern frontier in Europe had solidified into a stalemate, the Ottoman Empire's influence in the south and east remained vast and powerful. The conquests of Selim Suleiman had given them control over the entire eastern Mediterranean and Ottoman Lake. Their control of Egypt-Syria, North Africa gave them dominance over the ancient trade routes connecting Europe to the east, spices, silks. Other luxury goods passed through Ottoman lands, allowing taxes and immense wealth. The empire's reach extended further south, down the Red Sea. After conquering Egypt, they established control over the Hijaz, became protectors of Mecca and Medina. By the end of the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire had irrevocably changed the course of world history. It had risen from a small Anatolian principality to become one of the largest, most powerful, and longest-lasting empires the world has ever seen. It brought an end to the Byzantine Empire, the last remnant of Rome, and established a new center of power in Istanbul that would straddle the line between East and West for nearly 500 years. Its expansion into the Balkans reshaped the political and cultural map of southeastern Europe, a legacy that can still be seen in the region today. The empire's power was built on a combination of factors. Its formidable military, centered on the innovative use of gunpowder and the disciplined Janissary Corps, was unmatched for much of this period. Its strategic location, controlling the crossroads of global trade, provided immense wealth. And its series of brilliant and ambitious sultans provided the vision and leadership needed to harness this potential. They were patrons of the arts and architecture and created a unique and vibrant culture. Their capital, Istanbul, was a truly global city, a melting pot of peoples, religions, and ideas.